Most agents do not have a sales problem, they have a systems problem. Today's guest is Michael Pope, the Vice President of Operations for Health Plan Markets, and he is brilliant at building systems. He also comes with a background for physician marketing, and he understands what an agent goes through from both lenses. Now, if you take anything from this episode, we ask that you subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications so you know when we drop a new episode. Let's go ahead and get into how automation can change your life. Here's Michael Pope. Welcome back to another episode of Closed. I am Justin Jacobs, and to my right is the brilliant Michael Pope, good friend, and VP of Operations, almost messed that up, VP of Operations at Health Plan Markets. Welcome.
Awesome. Good. Excited to be here, Justin. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little about things, tech systems. And
we're going to talk about some stuff today, man. All the things. So I recently called you the nuclear code officer. What does that mean to you?
That's a heavy crown, man. That's if I'm walking around with the nuclear football, watch out. But no, it's good because I think in that role, you kind of have to know not just the thing that you have in your hand, but kind of the underlying things. And that is the thing that you have to have running an agency and growing to scale like we've had the opportunity to be, to be blessed with.
You're also our password czar, which is kind of what I was alluding to. Yeah. Yes. Where all of the codes are to get into everything as
by
well.
Hook or crook, they're there.
Awesome. So, what kind of system problems do you instinctively spot in the first 5 minutes when you join an organization? Because you came in and you dove right into the deep end. To the point, I don't even think you finished your paperwork the first week.
I think I signed.
You're already working stuff.
And did one HR video, and then it was, hey, there's a dumpster fire right here. Let's check it out. I think for me, looking at really kind of problem systems process, those are kind of the areas that I hang my hat in quite often at HPM. I think repetition is probably the biggest thing I try to look for. I've always had kind of the development mantra, systems mantra, management mantra, don't repeat yourself. If you're doing the same task over and over and over again, there's an opportunity to, make that more efficient, make that a little bit easier on you, reduce that friction. And then also a lot of times with automation and technology, it's very easy to throw something at a process, say, oh yeah, this is going to save, me hours. And if you don't keep it simple and you just start making, steps and steps and steps, you're going to be running in circles as well. So those are probably the two big things that I look for when diagnosing a problem in a system or a process.
So before HPM, what were you doing to kind of prepare yourself for this role? What were you building? What were you fixing?
Yeah, I've always, herding cats has always been the thing I've done in any capacity, whether that be in the managed care space where I had the opportunity to kind of cut my teeth out of college. Before that, some banking, some customer service. Really where I found, I guess, it's not one specific vertical or one specific task that I like. My biggest thing that I kind of stumbled into is I like to solve problems with constraints. So as a small business or, even just running a department, you've got constraints, whether that be time, money, personnel, technology. Constraints require you to be creative in the way you solve it. And so that took me a while in my career to figure out that was the thing that I really liked to do. It wasn't, it wasn't doing this PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't, having a sales conference or pitch. It was, how do I solve those problems with the tools I have and the constraints that we have to operate in?
Yeah. You're a business owner as well.
Yes.
You come with that mindset. I also guilty as charged. So you come into business and you realize that you have to be operational in your thinking. Yeah. When you first joined HPM, what was the first thing that jumped out to you as far as a risk?
When I joined, we had a lot of legacy, process. And, sometimes that's great because if you've got a process that is fine-tuned, you've iterated it several times, don't knock it. But I joined HPM in a time where we were had exponential growth the previous year. We were looking to continue that. And, some of our process systems and, teams were kind of stuck in that, maybe 5 years ago was when the engine was running. And so, coming in and looking at that as an easy win, I think anyone that's wanting to modify the way they do conduct their business, whether that be operations, leadership, strategy, it doesn't matter. You're going to look for easy wins, and really kind of an old process that needs to have maybe a fresh perspective or fresh technology implemented. Those easy wins are ways to get traction.
And by the way, I apologize again for all of that mess that I caused, because
no,
all of that's rat nest that you've been like untangling for the last year or so is my fault. I built it over 10 years or so.
I think that there's to me, what's interesting about that is, one of the, I don't want to, forecast what we have to cover, but one of the things that, in a small business is you got to use the tools you got.
Yeah.
You got to use the process, or, you got to use a tool that you might have a little bit of curiosity to learn a little bit more to go deeper. So you got to play the cards. And, if you're a principal and you've maybe got one or two agents underneath you and you're wanting to kind of say, all right, well, AEP's coming up, I got to hammer all this admin stuff out before. Yeah. And you're competing with time, focus, attention. Attention is another one. So yeah, that's just the byproduct of success is you have to look at it and say, all right, well, what's the next iteration? What's next?
You're too kind. You could have been a lot meaner right now, because you've got your work cut out. So let's talk about tools and systems. Yeah. And I want to shift it more towards what it means for an agent. What's wrong with most agent systems today?
I would say really the same. Well, I have the opportunity to be in health, insurance, healthcare for well over 15 years. I cut my teeth in the managed care side, and it was only joining HPM where I saw the health insurance agency side. But a lot of things that plague both areas in a very similar vertical is silos. A lot of things are siloed. Yes, the underlying structure that we have is attached to the federal government, either through Medicare or, ACA, IFP, whatever you want to call it, but they're siloed, right? Carriers do things one way, agencies do things one way. And what I found is there's a lot of similarity with that on the provider side as well. So I would say agents have to fight those silos. And they're not a few. I'll give a perfect perspective. So HPM, we have roughly around 60 carriers that we have, partnerships with. And, you give or take, maybe those have 2 to 3 product lines between those. In the worst case, you could potentially, as an agent, have to navigate the same thing 120 to 160 different ways. And so inherently, by the way that the business is conducted, just in the healthcare and health insurance space, silos are your biggest challenge for an agent, especially a solo agent that, is growing and wants to continue to grow. They have to fight that. That's just by design.
Yeah. And there's few exceptions to that rule, but why do so many agents build systems that are immature or childish or amateur, to be honest?
Yeah. To the point that, we spoke about earlier, you build with what you got, or, what you have the curiosity to know. And honestly, agents and agencies are small businesses. So this is a thing that, is not unique to the health insurance space. As a small business owner, you have the tools and resources. Maybe that persona is you're an agent, you're a top producer. You've got, enough book of business and client base to secure yourself, and you're looking to kind of go from there. But what got you there is probably going to be, the thing that works uniquely to you, unless you've kind of standardized it or distilled it in a way that you can pass that on. And so, it's not a knock. Have a system, it's not childish to build that, because
I was mostly making fun of myself.
Yeah, I know. As a little bit of an undertone, and I think it's accurate. But at the same time, you go to war with the army you have, not the one you want.
Well, there's so many tools, software systems that are available today. Whether they're designed for the insurance business or not, it's just incredible what's out there. And you got AI coming into this space as well. So it's just, I can see it could be overwhelming. Yeah. Me as a sales agent, I just had a spreadsheet. Yeah. I had 2 lists. I had, you're either on my, want list. Yes. Like I'm going after you as a prospect. Yes. Or I'd already sold you. Yeah. And if somebody disenrolled you, went back onto my hit list. Yeah. You just they never disappeared. I just kept going after you.
And that's, that is a common thing. I had the opportunity to work with an agent. She had probably around 3,500 active on her book, and she managed it with a Google Sheet. Yeah. And it works if you understand that there's sunk cost into maintaining that. Now, could she do that with 5 agents underneath her? No. But in the constraints that she had, she was successful. Now, she was leveraging that more than just one Excel spreadsheet that just lived and died on her laptop. She was using it for, some automation and some integrations into it. But you can do big things as an agent. Yeah. You just have to kind of own that process and make sure that you're focused on it.
Yeah. I mean, you would mention like even Google Sheets now, you can do automations and all this crazy stuff on it. But is the problem bad tools or just agents not using the right ones?
I think it's, to your point earlier, there are more options, more technology, more systems, more computing power today for an agent to use than there was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that as long as you're looking at it as the thing I have may have to iterate, in a 12 months, 16 months, just depending, I don't think it's a bad tool. I think just you get as much benefit out of it as you put in. And a lot of time you may not necessarily know a function or a feature the tool that you're using now has until, you poke around on it and play around in it. But the thing is you have to carve out time for that. If you're not learning new things or new systems, I think agents do a really good job of learning the products that they need to know in order to help make their help their clients have informed decisions. And I think that self-improvement on their business, on their process kind of falls to the wayside because the phone rings, because the emails have to get answered, because the follow-up's got to happen. So if you can carve out time, you can take a bad tool or a perceived bad tool, and enhance it. Yeah,
you're alluding to like them not only having to learn the industry, sales techniques, and now you're throwing like tech on top of it. And you got to learn tech. And there's a lot of great things you can get out of it, but a lot of them come back to us and say, this is not easy. This is too hard. What are they really saying when they're saying that,
Yeah, I think, ultimately there have never been more tools and there have never been easier ways to connect those tools together. Not just in agents kind of, toolbox, just technology as a whole. And the opportunities to learn and the opportunities to have access to that knowledge has never been easier. I mean, there's an old adage like the guidance system for the Apollo missions, your smartphone has 100 to 200,000 times like the power that these guys did to put something on the moon. And so if an agent's saying, it's too hard to learn or I don't have time, technology has never been closer to your fingertips to kind of discover or learn more. You have to want it. You have to kind of carve out the time to do it. And you can do it from your couch. So ultimately, I don't think it's agents have the frustration of, I can't learn. It's, where do I allocate time to do it in order to carve it out to be better at what I'm doing today than I was yesterday.
Amen. All right. We're going to shift to probably the most painful part of our business, and that's contracting. It's the bane of both of our existence. It's probably the number one complaint that we get from agents. Yes. So it's mostly contracting delays and how frustrating that is for agents. Where does that actually break down? Because you came in, and I think that was the dumpster fire you were alluding to. Yeah. It's like these contracting issues that we've had.
One of them, yeah.
Right. So in your mind, where is that happening? Where's the fire at?
Yeah, I mean, to a point that I said earlier, it's silos all the way down. Each carrier has their own special sauce or what they think is their special sauce to do a thing. Agencies, if upline agencies have their own special sauce of doing anything on the contracting level. And so most contracting is treated as a gate, right? Like you got to give me something. Otherwise, like, you can't do business. You can't partner. And while that's true, I think if you're extracting the customer out of it and it's not customer centric, inherently it's just going to become, you didn't do the PDF. You didn't send it. Right. Or you failed to send it, or
didn't click the link,
or click the link. And there's responsibility on all stakeholders, but I think having the customer, the client in mind changes the way that you do onboarding. I think some carriers do it well. I think some agencies do it really well. But I think by and large, delays are always always a big point of frustration because a lot of that process is not, the customer is not the agent.
Yeah.
I mean, the customer is, you got to get this thing in order to sell this thing. And that detachment sometimes brings the agents, they're not stakeholders. They're just kind of have to go through this gate. And if you don't do it, sorry about your luck.
Yeah. And from your perspective, is it more of a data issue versus a process issue? Where's the pain at?
Yeah. I think we operate in a space where most of the data that you need to have in order to get onboarded to contracting is pretty available. Just things like pulling your nipper, getting your NPN, going to state license and kind of going from there. There's a lot of tools out there that kind of make it. The challenge is, the fetch. All right, we got to go to this thing and grab this. Oh, okay. Well, does this match? The back and forth is I would say probably where a lot of the burn time is, and the sooner that information is captured, the easier it is to kind of get it going downstream. I think Spark does a really good job, which is our upline partner for a good bit of Medicare products that we have. They kind of have one funnel, and the way that they handle that is you give me the information once and that's it. And like that, to me, less time back and forth means, less of a delay, right. Whether it's on the agent's part or the agency's part or the carrier's part. So getting that time to data capture and then having it saved in a way that makes it recallable, that's really kind of one of the bottlenecks I've seen just in being my perspective. And this is nothing unique to this space.
Right.
Provider groups have the same challenge.
Really?
Credentialing is no different than contracting on the agent side. So it's not indicative of just this space. I think it's just, kind of the healthcare attached to Medicare just by design. But those are kind of the big points of friction that I've noticed since joining HPM.
Yeah, I think the ask from agents is let's get this over as quick as possible. It's about speed. So as far as transparency, which you've been really great at, you've built systems already that our team can access and see clearly what's going on. And now we're building it for the agent's perspective and then agency perspectives as well. What is transparency fix that speed can't?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think trust. For us at HPM, it's one of our missions is to be transparent in the systems and service that we provide to our agents. And I think getting that transparency gives you grace when the wheels start falling off on onboarding or contracting or delays. And the sooner you can provide that transparency to all stakeholders,
right,
the easier it gets to kind of navigate and get those issues as they bubble up and arrive. So to me, transparency is far more important than speed. I mean, speed is important because we're time bound by the things that we can do based on the time of year. But I think if all partners are transparent about the things that we have to do in order to get everything locked and loaded, right, I think that gives you grace, and I think that builds trust. So that's really one of the core missions that I've had for the first, over 6 months that I've been with HPM is taking those silos and providing information to our agents and agency partners, because those are the things that they need to be successful. And so as long as we're making systems, making processes that always have that in mind, we're given the opportunity to build that trust through, through their system, through where they're at. Yeah.
So the trust is a big part of it. You have come in and we were on the path to create a platform we call HQ, pretty obvious what that is, right? You're all in one dashboard. You start your day, you run your day, you end your day there. And one of the things you pointed out was like, hey, we can't see anything on this. Like, it was nice, but now we're getting to the point that transparency is there. But what we've also realized is agents can come in and kind of have this self-service aspect, which was a vision both you and I saw right away. How important is that to an agent, that self-service aspect?
Yeah. As an agent, you might be up doing apps. I'm looking over here, you Liz, at like 10 p.m. on a Saturday. The time cycle an agent has is not a Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have an interface or a platform, a system, or whatever you want to call it, to have them look at the information that's available to them, make a request and it's not in a situation that is beneficial for them because they're running them in that, well, you're going to fail. They're not going to adhere to that. So, one of our focus for HQ 2.0 is to enhance that self-service, right? Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be a challenge for an agent to make a request at 10 p.m. and have our staff take a look at it at 9 a.m. in the morning and already have maybe some elements of through knowledge base or, some way to remediate maybe that question. But we have, as an agency, we have to serve those who serve others. And our mission is to provide those systems and support that enables them to make that request when they can or have that visibility when they need it, not on our terms.
Yeah. And I think our culture kind of plays into that too. I mean, I don't think there's very many humans that like to actually call another human.
Yeah.
If you get a phone call, I don't know about you, but if I get a phone call, I'm like, okay, who just died?
Yeah.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? I mean, there still are people that call.
Yes.
But I'm saying for the most part, we live in a culture where it's like, just text me.
Yeah.
Or send me an email or something. Don't call me unless like the house is on fire or something.
Yes.
And even then, who knows if they're going to pick up.
And if you think about it on the customer service side, that's liberating as well.
Right.
Right. If I have 3 conversations I'm having at the same time because I'm doing it through whether chat or, support ticket or, whatever that system is, I couldn't have those conversations if it was directly over the phone, like a one-to-one. And so, there are ways, and it's not just one-sided, where as an agency, you need to be able to punch above your weight as well. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be looking at ways that you can do that with the resources and the technology and the constraints that you have.
Yeah, I think we do have to master the phone also, though. I mean, you and I are going to be talking about that this week, in our leadership meeting. We got to be better at answering the phone and getting those phone calls routed. But, it just kind of goes back to, how well are you communicating? Mm-hmm. How well are you answering that call when an agent does call?
Yeah.
Let's go back to data really quick. I've heard you say it all boils down to data. Mm-hmm. You're a marketer by, passion, I think, really, like me. Can you explain that? How important is data to you?
Yeah. So there is a meme, probably most may know it, pictures or it didn't happen. I think really for a business, if you're operating exclusively on hunches or gut feeling, those are going to get you. You're going to be successful with those, and you maybe have a better gut checking or gut calling, and you're successful there. But if you're not looking at your data, you're going in half blind. You may be able to kind of navigate through feeling or just things that have happened in the past, but your data informs the next steps that you should be taking. And if you're not leveraging that to the highest capability, you're being limited as an agent or agency.
What decisions are agents making blind that you see every day?
This is one that I think both you and I kind of look at with their time. I think if they're not looking where their time is spent or how it's structured on a day-to-day, they're missing an opportunity. There's many ways to kind of solve that. We have something internally that we use, a daily planner that kind of fits with our business process. But if you're not looking at that and saying, where am I doing the thing multiple times a day that is burning and just really attrition happens, that's an easy thing for agents to be blind to, because at the end of the day, they got to pick up the phone. They got to service their clients. They got to, prep for the things that are coming on a cyclical cycle. So if they're not looking at how they're spending time, it's easy for it to be secondary or tertiary.
Right. So you're untangling this rat's nest that I've created over the last, 11, 12 years. What happens when systems don't sync? Because we've seen some of that.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that, this is a therapy session right now. And where does that come into play in the agent's life?
Yeah, I think this goes back to transparency. Not every system is going to be aces all the time. There are going to be things just in technology and humans and operations where something doesn't connect. And so as long as you are transparent with that and you are cascading that information to all parties, once again, it comes back to that level of trust. You're able to minimize, a service failure. You're able to, to get to a point where, we messed up here, but our speed to uncover it and our speed to present it as an actionable or something to remediate is better than we just sitting on it and it not syncing and it for days or weeks or, however whatever that task or that function is. So it can be something that breaks the trust of your agents. It could be something that you miss an opportunity because of it, or it could be because you don't even retain the client.
Right.
You might have, a book of business that isn't updated because a carrier only sends this one report and it's manual and it's garbage. And, there are buckets of things that may necessarily be 100% outside of your control. But if it's not connected and it's not connected to the central thing that you do every single day or the thing that you check every day or every other day, it can fall to the wayside.
Yeah. So, the syncing of data, right? And the back and forth. We want the systems to talk to each other because agents are using multiple systems in the day. By the way, we have like a ghost happening here with this light. I don't know what's going on with that. It's kind of crazy. How dangerous is bad data compared to no data?
I think bad data is worse because if you don't have any data, you're going to go into it with a little bit more reserve. Let me say it's a new thing or a new process or a new venture. But if you have bad data that's pointing to a root cause in the wrong area, you're just confident with that. And so I think bad data tends to have a little bit more of a negative impact than the no data. And really it's carving out time to, all right, well, how do we trust but verify?
Right. We're going to talk about automation, which is, I think the next level after, you sync your systems, you've got data coming in and out. Automation is the next step. You've alluded to, okay, what's this thing that I'm playing whack-a-mole with every week? How do we get rid of that repetition? And automation is the answer. As soon as I figured that out, I was able to scale hugely. It was a big part of how we've grown. So what's the biggest automation mistake that you see agents making, or, what should they be doing as far as automation is concerned?
Yeah, I think once agents and agencies understand automation as a force multiplier, it's candy. They're throwing, what can we do to do this thing, to just chuck automation at it. And I think that sometimes that can work, but more often than not, you just kind of make an ugly process now automated, and you don't really have the manual checks of like the guardrails of, okay, well, I got to run this thing one time. For me, a good barometer of where an agent or agency partner should look for it is pain. Pain is by far it's the lessons that you have with you, both in business and in personal life. And I think if there are things that you do on a day-to-day basis that cause you pain, those are probably the things that you need to prioritize to find, some reduction to.
It reminds me of the fable of the salesman that goes up to, the cabin, and there's an old man in a rocking chair and a dog laying on a nail. Or the dog is whining, right? Oh, what's wrong with your dog? Well, he's laying on a nail. Well, why doesn't he just get up and move? That doesn't hurt that bad.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of that in our minds. It's like, okay, well, we haven't automated it yet because it hasn't hurt that bad.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a, I would say sometimes in development, like particularly in software development, you have to do a laborious thing first to understand the value of it not being there, that boulder being lifted off. And sometimes I have to force myself in that regard as well, whether it's looking at CMS Medicare Advantage data, which is just hot garbage, but it's available to look at. You have to manually process that to appreciate the value of that. And I think because so many things are easy and close to our fingertips, we lose that. So once again, I always kind of revert back to pain, because that's a thing you can go, oh yeah, this is exactly why I chose to fix this.
Right.
It's because this thing hurts.
Oh yeah.
Or it used to hurt and now it doesn't. Yeah.
So like you've seen automation break and then you have to put the team in manual mode. That's when the nail starts to come back up. You're like, this sucks. Like, why isn't this automated? Then you really see the power of that.
Yes, exactly.
So what do you think an agent should automate first, like right away?
I think ultimately, what is that thing that you wind up dreading to do that hurts, but you have to get it done. Otherwise, you miss something, you miss an opportunity, you miss, you miss the ability to build rapport with a client. You miss the ability to have, visibility on all your book of business. I'll give an example. Commission statements are another bane. There's no centralized format of that data that comes in to an agency.
It's all over the place.
And it's only compounded if you're an agent, right? As an agency, we have some mechanisms, we have some staff and team members, but if you're wrangling commission statements and you're trying to reconcile stuff and it's not in a way that is standardized, it hurts. And so I would look at, what is your daily pain, but then also what does your data look like coming in?
Yeah.
If there's one thing to kind of automate is how to bring in the data, but also like how to process it so it's uniform. Because like I said, you could pull 5 different carrier commission statements and they're going to look 5 different ways.
Yeah.
You could do it. I mean, enrollment's a little bit cleaner, but commissions by and large is what really kind of drives the bus. And if it's fragmented and it's not isolated and it's not applicable to that individual client that's maybe in a CRM or maybe in, some sort of sheet that you manage, the hot and cold sheet that you were calling out.
Yeah.
I think those are low-hanging fruits for agents to look at and assess.
No, it's brilliant. Let's shift to physicians. Now, you and I both came from that world. I think you entered the same way, essentially, which we vibed on right away. And then you recently came from a provider group that you were there in the ops seat, essentially, as a consultant, I think.
Correct.
So you've seen both sides of it. How does that influence like tech and operations, what we're talking about today? How does that influence the relationship with the providers? Yeah.
So providers are, at least on field agents that are in the market, provider relations, that revenue or that referral opportunity is what a lot of people chase, particularly in states that have a higher, Medicare Advantage saturation. And really understanding the panel mix that a provider needs to be successful and understanding how your data may inform that is an edge that not a lot of agents kind of understand. Yes, I had the opportunity to talk to Mrs. So-and-so. We put her on, whatever carrier, plan or XYZ, but how that relevance, how that relates to the provider and their mix of business and how that can be powered to, change their day-to-day. That's a rapport and a relationship that very few agents kind of understand on the backside. And, this was something that just me being in that space, kind of understanding, you have to understand what it means for a provider just as much as what it means for you as, to service your clients. And so I think getting and understanding and leveraging some of the technologies that you have at your fingertips, some of the data that you have at your fingertips and making it relevant to your other partners, I think is huge.
Yeah. So is that what you were looking for? When you were in that seat, in that physician side, you had the pick of the litter as far as agents.
Absolutely.
So that exactly.
That was what separated a really good agent from a really good partner.
Which translated to you giving them leads and them making
They're hanging
sales.
out in my office. They're doing my special events.
Right.
Ultimately, when you're able to understand what a provider needs to grow, just as much as what you need to grow, whether, as an agent or agency, those relationships are connected more than a lot of agents understand. So I think getting that mindset, leveraging the tools that you may have at your disposal to kind of show that is a big differentiator between just the guy that wants to come in and hang out.
Yeah. So we're short on time, so I'm going to skip some of these questions that I had. But what's one uncomfortable truth agents don't want to hear about their business?
Nobody has all this shit figured out. I think
True.
A lot of agents coming in, they're top producers, right? They're in this space. They're successful for a specific reason, and they have to be comfortable with being vulnerable and making bets, and some of those not pay off. And so, if you're looking at this thing is going to be the way that I'm going to be doing it for 10, 12, 15 years, you're not looking at this space correctly. We operate in a space that on minimum changes every 12 months.
Oh yeah.
Like bare minimum. That's not including, provider groups coming in. That's not including new carriers in market. Like our market has always been a market of flux.
Yeah.
And so if you are coming in with the notion that this one thing is the thing that will never need to be iterated, you're not looking at this space. You're not looking at the opportunities, at least in my mind, as proactively as you should.
So I got one more question, but before I do that, I'm going to do something new here today. I'm a big proponent for health products, and I'm big on protein. And so I have this thing here. It is a Legendary Foods protein pastry. It's blueberry flavored. And I've been on this kick of like finding high quality protein stuff. And let me just say, if you're into the protein game right now, it is the best time in life because you can eat junk food and get ripped. So like this is essentially a Pop-Tart.
A Pop-Tart.
So I'm going to give this to you to try it.
Absolutely.
And then I want you to rate it on the CMS star rating scale.
Star ratings.
Okay. 5 means that you're making massive amounts of money.
Right.
And then, a 3 is like you're barely in business.
Right.
A 1, you might as well wrap it up.
All
so
right.
Here we go.
So I'll do a little bit of background while I'm opening this up.
By the way, you're doing this with me too, Liz. I got another thing for you.
So Pop-Tarts were my jam, as a kid.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a little bit, warm it up in the toaster and put a little bit of butter on it. So I'm excited to see if this is going to live up to it.
Oh yeah. And I was big on that stuff too. So like I said, like it's like junk food. So I feel relatively good about giving it to my kids. And by the way, this is not sponsored or anything. I'm just trying something new here. So we'll see how it goes. So your thoughts.
It's not bad, man.
It's not bad. Yeah.
It's good. I can do this.
Right?
It's like grabbing coffee, get on the road, eat one of these. I'm good to go.
All right. While you're doing that, what's your star rating on this thing?
I would say 4. It doesn't hit. It doesn't hit the high notes of like, nostalgia. Oh, this is the
They have different flavors though. So don't give up on them.
Blueberry is solid. So
Nice.
4.
Yeah.
We're making money. We ain't making it all, but 4.
You're getting a little bit of a bump there. Very nice. Very nice. All right. Last question here. If an agent is overwhelmed, but serious about this business, what's the first tactical move they should make this week?
I think auditing your repetition. If there's one thing that is you're able to uncover low-hanging fruit that is going to pay dividends right off the bat. A lot of time agency partners will look and say, I have to like rescaffold this entire process from, what I do in one day all the way to what I have to do in day 60. And if you're getting into looking at things, waiting 60 days for a payoff because you refine the process, it's too big of a bet.
Yeah.
So I think really looking at what am I doing every day or, at least weekly that I have to do it, but I don't like the way that I'm doing it.
Right.
And so I think that's really the first step that I would recommend is like, where does that pain live? And, what tools, what process can I have to minimize that?
Yeah. And what you're saying there is really just boiling down to, are you actually reviewing your actions?
Yes.
And sitting down for 15, 20 minutes at the top of the week, whether that's Sunday night or Monday morning, and really doing that exercise. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. I think you have to have intent when you look at that. If you're just looking at it as just a punch list, you're not looking at it as deep as you should, because you might be changing a process that gives you 2-3 hours a week.
Yeah.
What happens in 2 to 3 hours a week? I mean, you could be conducting benefits reviews. You could be, putting together additional partnerships. There are other things that will pay dividend if you're able to kind of bring that, that time back into your fold and be able to go from there. So,
or the ultimate is getting time with your family or, just having free time.
Yes.
Which is the ultimate thing. Well, this is why I think agents stay in the business and continue. But the more successful you get, sometimes the weight of that just collapses on itself. So Michael Pope, Vice President of Operations at Health Plan Markets. Man, you did it. Thank you for being here. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully there's been some value, some nuggets agents and agencies will be able to pull from it.
If this episode made you uncomfortable, good. That was the point. Systems can make or break an agent. and we're glad that you stuck around. Now, if you got anything from this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, and if you know an agent that has a terrible system, please share this episode with them so you can share the good news. With that, I'm Justin Jacobs. This is Closed, and you have a nice day.